Hey there folks, how's it going? We've done cottage pie, we've done shepherd's pie, playlist linked here. Let's complete the potato topped holy trinity with an incredible fish pie that will knock the socks off anyone who cares to try it. Beautiful, perfectly cooked fish in a creamy white wine sauce with an amazing smashed potato topping that you're just going to love. Let's get into it. The base of our sauce today is going to be milk, so let's start there. I've got a good sized brown onion and I'm just going to roughly chop that up into eighths, peeling as I go. I'll toss those into a good sized saucepan and add 500 ml or about a pint of whole milk. Don't worry too much about any bits at this point. We'll pass this through a sieve later. We're just looking to get some flavour infused right now. I'll move that over to a hob over a low heat to gently heat up. I don't want it to boil and I definitely don't want it to burn, so low heat is the key. Let's leave it alone for a few minutes and get that veg prepped. For the topping, I'll just peel 5 good sized potatoes. I'm not going to mash these today, so something midway between floury and waxy works well. I have these generic red potatoes. Whatever you can get locally will work fine. You can use floury potatoes such as Mary's Piper or Russet if that's all you can get hold of, but something a little waxier is best, IMHO, since we won't be adding any extra liquid to these. Anyway, I'll just peel these and roughly chop them into fairly large chunks. Again, not mashing them, so I don't want them to cook quite as much as I would for mash, so a little larger than usual is good here. I'll take these over to the sink and give them a good rinse to get rid of excess starch. The usual drill, change the water a few times and move them around just to get that starch off. That done, these go over to the hob over a fairly high heat and I add in a good pinch of salt and then I'll just leave them alone to come back to the boil. I'll set a timer for 15 minutes, but I'll keep an eye on them. We want them to be almost, but not quite tender by the time they're done, which might take anywhere between 10, 15 minutes, depending on the size of your potatoes. Back at the board, and the last bit of veg prep for now is some spring onions. I love these in a fish pie. Alliums are sorely needed here, but regular onions can be too domineering. These mild spring onions will bring the flavour that we need without overpowering the delicate flavours of that fish. There's nothing much to report here. Take 3, remove any dry or leathery outer layers, take off the top wherever that starts to look dry, and then chop through these pretty thinly and just set them aside for later. A few minutes later, our milk has just started to steam slightly, and a quick test with my finger tells me it's just at scald temperature, so I'll pull it off the heat, pop a lid on it, and just let it sit. This will give that onion some time to infuse some flavour and give us a fantastic base for our sauce later. Give it about 5 to 10 minutes or so. In the meantime, we'll make a start on the roux. Standard white sauce operating procedure applies here. So I'll melt 30 grams of butter into a pan big enough to make the sauce in, and then as soon as the foaming calms down a bit, I'll go in with 30 grams of plain or all-purpose flour. I give that a good stir around, and then over a low heat, I'll keep it moving very regularly for about a minute or two, just until that raw flour smell has gone and it's started to colour very, very slightly. White wine is the base of choice today, and I like something medium with just a hint of sweetness. This Australian Chardonnay will fit the bill perfectly. I'll turn the heat off and then add a good glass, maybe 250 ml, while stirring vigorously to fully combine. Make sure to get into the corners and pick up any bits of roux that are hiding there, or they'll be in danger of burning later, and that will totally ruin your day. Trust me on this. Once that's in and fully combined, I'll give it a couple of minutes to cook a bit, and then I'll grab a sieve and I'll add the milk just in 2 batches. Now, because this milk is hot, it'll be slightly harder to get it combined than if it was cold. So going in 2 batches is worth the hassle here, IMHO. Add in a batch, stir it briskly to fully mix it in, and then add in the rest and just repeat the stirring. This should leave you with a smooth, well-combined sauce with no lumps of roux left. If you do find you have trouble, have at it with a whisk if you need to. Because that wine is still pretty acidic, there's also a non-zero chance that the milk will split as you add it. Don't worry if that happens. We've got more cooking to do, and that'll bring it back together in the end. So just have faith and keep on cooking. Next, fish stock. If you have homemade fish stock hanging around, then more power to you. Use that. Alternatively, get some nice pre-made stock from the shop if you can. I had trouble finding either, so I'm reduced to using these stock pots. But to be honest, they'll be just fine for the sauce. We'll have so much flavour going on anyway that these will more than do the job that we need them to. So 2 of those go in, and then back over a medium-low heat. I'll stir it thoroughly to mix them in. For the finishing touch, in goes a good amount of dried dill. It's perfect in this dish. You can use fresh if you've got the time and the inclination. You do you. I'm using dried and it will rehydrate fully in the sauce as it cooked. It'll be perfect. Follow that with a solid pinch of garlic granules. I find these are slightly milder and sweeter than fresh garlic and are a perfect fit in a fresh pie. But of course you can use fresh if you like, do what you want. Granules can be a bit grainy, but like the dill, these will rehydrate nicely while the sauce cooks, so it's not an issue that I need to worry about today. Finally, some onion salt. Celery salt works well here too, use whatever you have. Just don't go too crazy, it's easy to over season this sauce and we can always adjust it later. So I'll leave that over a low heat to bubble and reduce for a bit, maybe 15 minutes while I get the potatoes sorted out. These are looking great, they're not completely tender and they still give some resistance when poked with a fork, which is exactly what I'm looking for. Notice that they don't fall apart after I jab that fork into them. That's perfect for what we're doing today. I'll pull them off the heat, drain them, rough them up a bit, and then set them aside to steam for a bit. 15 minutes later, this sauce is reduced and thickened to the point where it leaves a trail when I run a spoon through it. It's also come back together after it split slightly when we first added the milk. You see, I told you it would. We want this to be slightly too thick at this point as we'll let it down a bit shortly, and so I'll pull this off the heat and bring it over to the board. To finish the sauce, I want a bit more acid, which will work perfectly with the fish and finish building out a good flavour story with the creaminess, the salt, the sweetness from the wine and the acid all working together in perfect harmony. Creme fraiche is my weapon of choice today, and once the sauce has cooled slightly, I'll add in about a tablespoon of that, and then I'll pep things up just a little bit more with the zest and juice of 1 lemon. It looks like I need a better zester. This blade grater clearly isn't up to the job. I'll grab the box grater and add a new microplane to my shopping list. Link in the description if you need one too. Finally, for some delicious salty pops, I'll add in a couple of tablespoons of capers. These are brined capers, they're totally optional, but they are very, very good. Definitely worth getting. They keep for a while if you get them in the brine. They're useful in all sorts of other dishes. There's no need to chop these, just drop them in whole. Obviously, if you want to chop them, go right ahead. The fish is the star of the show here, so make sure you get something good quality. If you're one of the lucky ones and you still have a local fishmonger, then pay them a visit and tell them you're making a fish pie. They'll set you up with the best that they have available. If, like me, your local fishmonger is sadly a distant memory, then you'll be visiting the supermarket instead. Wherever you go, be sure to get the fish that's sustainably sourced. Personally, I like M&S for this, hashtag not an ad. I have a mixture here, so this is about 750 grams in total, £1.5 of mixed cod, salmon and smoked haddock. It's worth spending a few pence extra to get the best you can, and if you can only get frozen, that's no problem. It's virtually impossible to buy fish these days that hasn't been frozen at some point. Yes, even if you live by the sea. And anyway, it refreezes really well, so just give it a few hours in the fridge to thaw before using it in this recipe. Now I love the mixture of the oily salmon, the delicate cod, and the bold smoky flavour of the haddock for this pie. It all balances perfectly with the sauce. If you're feeling particularly decadent, throw in some peeled deveined king prawns too, but be careful. These can end up a bit overdone by the time the pie's cooked. Be careful with the cooking times or they can be quite rubbery. Whatever fish you're using, add it to the cooled sauce and stir gently to combine, and then pop on the lid and set it aside. Now these potatoes have been steaming for a few minutes, and as mentioned, I'm not mashing them today, I'm just doing a potato crush. I call it smashed potato because I'm enormously clever. So for that, I'll just take my masher and just gently press on the potatoes in the pan to break them apart. I'll use a fork to move it around and make sure I can get most of the really big chunks, and then I'll call it done. Right before we assemble the pie, I'll add in those spring onions we chopped earlier. I almost forgot them. Doing this at the last minute helps them stay vibrant in the finished dish and to not melt into the background. Once they're stirred through, I'll transfer this sauce to a pie dish. In hindsight, I probably should have used a slightly bigger one than this, but nah, this did the job, even if it leaked a bit of filling onto the baking tray. All of that filling goes in, making sure to get everything out of the pan. We don't want to waste even a morsel here. And next I'll just level that off, and then using my hands, other implement options are available, I'll just top the pie with the crushed potatoes. Again, if you're feeling decadent, do this in 2 layers. Half of the potato, dot with some butter and a little salt if you like, and then top with the rest of the potatoes. I didn't do that today, and if I'm honest, I kind of wished I had. Whatever. Once that's done, give it a very light dusting with a small amount of cheese. I usually like to use a very small amount of something bold like an aged Gouda or even a Comté, but a mature cheddar also works and is probably more traditionally British, so that's what I'm using today. Having said that, I will break with tradition completely and add a small amount of Parmesan. Not much. This is more seasoning really than cheesy flavour, but it definitely adds an extra dimension that you'd miss if it wasn't there. Once those are added, I'll add a pinch of finishing salt, and then let's get the oven onto preheat to 180C or 360F convection, maybe 10 degrees C higher for conventional. And once that's hot, in goes my pie on a baking tray, unless you especially enjoy cleaning up burned on messes from your oven floor. And I'll set a timer for 30 minutes and just go off and do something else while this does its thing. Half an hour later, this smells divine. I'll pull it from the oven, and yes, it has overflowed slightly onto the baking tray, but other than that, it looks great. There's some great crispy bits on top, and it's going to be delicious. Let this cool down slightly before you serve it, and then dish it up generously alongside your favourite vegetable mix. Carrots go really well, as do peas, fine beans, whatever you want to use is absolutely fine. And then just dig in and enjoy. And if you want something to watch while you eat, check out this playlist next for the full-on pie experience.